So I make no secret of stealing a lot of stuff from Ralphie. Um, I was watching the channel way back in the early days when he was doing the Glenn Breton reviews, that stuff, like way early on. And at this point, I think it's just kind of seeped into my unconscious. Anyway, so I copy him all the time, and he's just recently named Led-chaig 10-year-old as his whiskey of the year. So I figured, since I am a copycat, meow, copycat, also a very underrated tune from George Clinton. Go listen to it. It's kind of overshadowed by Atomic Dog, but definitely worth a listen. I'm going to copycat him and do a quick review of Led-chaig 10-year-old for you. These are some samples I bought from a shop somewhere outside of Chicago sometime last year, I think back in the summer, and I just never got around to it. But since it would be no fun to just review Led-chaig, the official 10, I'm going to throw in Tobermory 10-year-old. This no longer really exists officially. Like I think it got discontinued in the face of the new 12-year-old, which, so far as I tell, hasn't yet to hit Chicago. But the 10-year-old you can still find in sort of back corners. So I figured it was worth review, especially in context of Led-chaig, because Tobermory is basically unpeated Led-chaig. And at this point, the Led-chaig brand is probably more famous than Tobermory is. But I didn't want to stop there, because Led-chaig 10, although I've always kind of liked it, has always had a big problem. And that problem is stuff like this. This is an independent bottling of Led-chaig. It's from Archives, which is basically the whiskey-based people. And I'm going to review these too. So we're just going to go down the line on these. I'm going to do my usual thing of trying them completely neat, and then adding water, going back through them again, and we'll give them a final score. So Tobermory Distillery, previously Led-chaig Distillery, on the Isle of Mull, has a long and very interesting history. I mean, on the bottles, they are not shy about trying. Sorry, wrong side. About trying to point out the fact that this has been around since 1798. Don't totally believe that, because it sounds like if you go back and actually read the history, it sounds like the place has basically been rebuilt over and over and over again for centuries. So, to what extent the facilities actually reached back to the 18th century, who knows? But it's certainly a historic location to distill whiskey, and that's great. So Led-chaig was open for some portion of the 70s, the original Led-chaig distillery, and then it closed for a long time before it was reopened in, I think, 89 or 90. And they started producing whiskey again. Tobermory, and it was renamed Tobermory Distillery. The main distillate, the unpeated, was called Tobermory, and the peated version was called Led-chaig after the old distillery. The early distillate was not good. Sort of early 90s stuff from this distillery was notoriously fainty and kind of unpleasant to drink. So if now that Led-chaig has kind of gotten a name for itself, and Tobermory connected with that, if you see bottles from like 92, 94 that look like they're being offered at a bargain price, there may be a reason for that, and step carefully, because that distillate isn't that great. So all this stuff was would go to supermarkets, and it wouldn't sell, and it would go on deep discount. People would buy it for $15-20 just to mix with soda and stuff, and it sort of got a reputation as a little bit of a whipping boy for the reviewers, as one of the sort of worst whiskeys you could buy. That was what it was back in the day. something changed in how they were doing things in the late 90s. I don't know what it was, but you can, if you sort of go back and start reading reviews of the independent bottlings from around 97, 98, something changed in what they were doing. The yeast, something or other. Whatever it was, suddenly this stuff started getting a lot better. It took a few years for the actual whiskey from those days to catch up, but around the year, as we're approaching the Obama years, 2008, 2010, 12, you get to see a lot of reviewers starting to dip into these, which were not expensive because, again, Tobermory distillate was not well regarded, and kind of having to do a double take because, they were kind of going, wait, I thought this stuff was supposed to be crap, and I'm supposed to be trashing it, but this is really good. And those early bottlings from the originally distilled in the late 90s kind of started to build a reputation, and then after that you started to see younger Led-chaigs in particular, and often very, very heavily younger Led-chaigs, like 4, 5, 6-year-olds, that were all pretty much excellent as far as I've seen and tried myself. And that kind of cemented things. Led-chaig kind of got a reputation as the kind of go-to budget, nerdy alternative for peat. And here we are with Ralphie kind of giving it some crowning glory in these last days. The thing is, it's always been kind of the independent bottlings that have made Led-chaig's name and kind of Tobermory's name. The officials have never quite been viewed as up there with the others, so I thought it would be fun to kind of do a head-to-head of, obviously the official Led-chaig with Tobermory, but also the official Led-chaig with an independent Led-chaig, just to see, how things measure up. All right, I will stop talking, and we will get through some reviews. All right. Starting off with Tobermory. Tobermory 10-year-old. Single malt Scotch whiskey from the Isle of Mull. Again, this does not exist anymore. I imagine they probably weren't sitting on the shelf too long, but I imagine this was stock from 2016, 2017. There's a kind of code on here. It doesn't give me a lot of hints, but there's like a little 16 on here, which kind of might indicate this is a 2016 release. I have no idea. All right, 46.3% alcohol by volume. It is not marked as natural color or unchill-filtered, but that doesn't mean it's not, and especially there are reasons for distillers, even when they're trying to do that, to not mark themselves as doing it. So who knows? That does not look like a particularly fake color to me, though. All right, on the nose, Tobermory 10-year-old. Okay, so it's fun, and weird and interesting is the first note you would give. Tobermory is not a whiskey you give to beginners at all. It's not even a whiskey I would give to an intermediate. This is like, make sure they can find their way around, I don't know, Springbank, that kind of thing. And then you can hand them something like this, try to wrap their head around it. So it's Led-chaig, the peated distillate, we'll get to this, is more friendly because there's the peat there and that kind of desserty character that peat distilled in or aged in bourbon casks can do. Tobermory is harder to sort of appreciate. Okay, so it's extremely malty. So apple, pear, cream of wheat with honey in it, like just wildflower honey, maybe some blossom honey, orange blossom honey. But then it gets weird. Then it gets a little weird. We're getting some grapefruit juice, lavender, and some slightly beery hints. So it smells. I read other people's tasting notes on this, And often they'll mention like sourdoughy bready notes. I more get beery notes. This reminds me of like very malty German lagers or something, like a Doppelbock. Think Celebrator. Yeah, so Doppelbock. There's some mustard seed in this, so yeah, very prominent. So drops couple of mustard seeds into your Doppelbock. And on top of that, a little whiff of sea breeze. It kind of initial impression. It's like a mutant version of Old Pulteney. It's kind of in that neighborhood. A little musty basement, little paper mache, but nice. It's more like the slightly gluey side of paper mache. Yeah, like a musty basement that's flooded a few times and you haven't really bothered to clean it out. It's fun. It's very different. On the palate, oh, it's delightful and it's dry. There's something about Tobermory distillate that, even when it's aged in like bourbon casks, comes across as extremely dry. Certainly not my favorite malt in the world, but tons of fun and very, very different. Mostly falls on the nose. We're arriving heavy on the apples and the pears. Some wildflower honey this time. Oatmeal. And that's all kind of joined by a wave of like lavender potpourri, the mustard seed, the premium German Doppelbocki lager stuff, some ginger, not raw ginger. I don't think there's a lot of virgin oak on this, but more like pickled ginger, like you get at a sushi place, like a lime candy sort of thing. Lots of musty basement, some field flowers. Seawater. Lots of kind of ashy pepperiness in the back end. Again, very dry, which I like. This is, I mean, so it's extremely odd. This is both very fruity and floral and kind of weirdly beery and herbaceous, but at the same time quite dry and a little bit austere. I like this style because it is so different. If you've been getting really bored with your standard run of, I don't know, Lafroigs and Glendronachs and, you know, all that sort of Pulteneys for that matter, Kleinlich. If all that is starting to get a little bit dull to you, spend some time with Tobermory. It will reward you. Again, not my favorite, but definitely worth noticing. Serge Valentine, who is probably the most prominent whiskey reviewer on the internet these days, consistently kind of gives these two guys lower scores, even after they bumped up to 46 odd percent. You know, I remember him giving Tobermory 10 like a 79, 80, something like that. And I understand because there might be a balance problem here. It's a little, you know, going in lots of different directions. But I mean, I disagree with that. I think that this is a far better effort than that kind of score would suggest. But this is a review about Led-chaig, isn't it? Because, you know, because Ralphie picked Led-chaig 10. So let's move on to Led-chaig 10. This is the one that I think people are actually buying. I really hope people start getting more interested in unpeated Tobermory, but you know, realistically, it's going to be Led-chaig that gets all the attention. All right, here we go. On the nose, Led-chaig 10, probably bottled circa 2016, 17, 46.3%. Okay, so The peat is first up, and there's lots of it. This is a very heavily peated malt, and the peat is very maritime. It's very Islay-like. So we're not talking like Talisker style or Highland Park style twiggy peat, where there's lots of leaves and twigs in there. We're not talking Ardmore or Balachin style like mainland peat with a lot of like barnyardy fudgy notes. This is kind of Islay-styled maritime peat. So clean with some like sea spray in there. Sea breeze. A little like vanilla fudge. It smells much more dessert-like than the Tobermory. And that's kind of the effect of the fresh bourbon barrel meeting the peat. You get that kind of desserty sort of effect, which is why I guess Americans really like this stuff. But then, beyond those sort of expected notes that you would expect in like your Ardbeg 10 or whatever, you're getting lime zest, hints of lavender, hints of dried grass, some coal smoke in there, but it's so reminiscent of Lagavulin, that the coal smoky note, but it's intermingled with those fruity notes, the zesty citrusy notes, grapefruit, and I know from experience having that if you let this sit over time, the grapefruit thing will become more prominent. Oatmeal, applesauce, and all of that is intermingled with this very peaty, smoky, desserty thing, which you which is what you expect. And that makes it interesting and that makes it fun on the palate. I know I keep saying weird and fun, but this is weird and fun. Maritime peat. Again, lots of seawater, coal smoke, the vanilla fudge thing, and then you got the floral lavendery kind of thing, the citrus kind of playing in the corners, giving this character the applesaucey thing, quite peppery. Again, these are both very dry so far. This is less dry than the Tobermory. It's sort of, but the fudginess is all concentrated in the arrival and a little bit in the mid palate, and then it's just very sort of fruity, like beery dry on the back end. Quite peppery. Some absinthe over time. A little bit of absinthe. That mustard seed thing. The malty doppelbock note is there on the palate. Plus the musty basement, plus the lime juice. I mean, it's you can tell this is benchmarking something like Ardbeg 10, because it does have that. It seems to be aiming at moments towards that, easy desserty quality that Ardbeg 10 kind of brings. That sort of almost peated s'more kind of thing. But those fun Tobermory notes are just around the corner. The floral character, the apple, the weird applesauce doppelbocky thing. That dryness, which is again, seems to be a hallmark of these. Even though score-wise, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to score this up with Ardbeg 10, that doesn't mean it's not. You should just keep buying Ardbeg 10 all the time. You will get bored. You will get bored. Human beings need change. This is a good change to try. If you're looking to experiment around a little bit, just freshen up your palate, Tobermory Distillery is a great one to try. And I really do like the Led-chaig 10. Always have, but again, as I said, it always has this problem represented by this bottle, which is you could always kind of readily, although less readily than back in the day, you could fairly readily get independent bottlings of Led-chaig. This one in particular is an Archives, handpicked by Binny's in Chicago. Aged 11 years. I'll just read out the stats for you. Distilled this February 7th, 2008, and bottled December 19th in 2019 from Hogshead 700002 for 242 bottles. It is unchill-filtered. It is natural color, and again, it's from Archives, who are basically the whiskey-based people. It is a mere 53.8% alcohol, which is comparatively low for something at cask strength. But not so terribly uncommon. I should disclose that I don't think I mentioned this on the channel before. I've mentioned that I work for a large wine cellar in Chicago. I actually work for Binny's. But I do not work for the spirits department. I work for the wine department. And honestly, I don't think they would care that I'm going to trash their Led-chaig or whatever. But as a conflict of interest thing, I'm declaring I kind of work for the same people that pick this bottle. So just be aware of that. What I'm going to have to say kind of goes for independent Led-chaigs in general. This is representing that category. All right, here we go. On the nose, more nippy. More nippy than you expect from the fairly modest increase in alcohol from 46.3. More white pepper, a lot more white pepper. Lots of maritime peat, and then a kind of apple-y thing. Apple doused in lime juice and grapefruit juice. And that applesauce-y thing. So it's apple and applesauce, like more like cider apple and applesauce, and the sort of citrusy juice thing. Vanilla fudge, again. Gunpowder tea. So gunpowder green tea. Lavender, lots of mustard seed on this one, way more so than the 10. A little absinthe, cream of wheat. That Doppelbock thing, that's back. So we're getting a little shot of Celebrator in our Led-chaig. And a lot of like rocks and minerality. I was getting a coal smoke thing on the Led-chaig 10. This really just smells more like rock dust. Oh, it's delightful. A little more earthy too, kind of hard to pin down. All right, let's see on the palate. On the palate of this Archives 11-year-old. Oh, that's good. Right off the bat, hugely minerally and coal smoke. Very dry. Very dry. Minerally, coal smoke, married to the kind of peaty, fudgy, seawatery thing. Applesauce, lavender, kind of there too. Like oatmeal with some cranberries in it. Then the gunpowder green tea thing. I mean, just rocks. I feel like I'm just chewing peated rocks right now. Doppelbock, that's there. Yeah, the apple, like a slightly fermentary applesauce thing. The pepper, the mustard, and there's something distinctive to like Eastern Europe. Black bread, which is sourdough rye. If you ever go to Lithuania, where my wife is from, you can buy these loaves of different kinds of black bread out there. But there's this particular kind which is so thick, it's meant to like last through the winter. It's that, that hardcore. You basically need a lightsaber to cut the stuff. That's kind of what I'm getting on the palate of this. That really, really intensely tough Eastern European rye, sourdough rye bread. No arguing with this. This is fantastic. This is the kind of thing that made, well, this and the heavily sherried versions are the kinds of things that made Led-chaig's reputation, and it is also the thing that's making a problem for the official bottling, which, in total honesty, is wonderful. I like it a lot. It's not as good as this. This is absolutely running circles around it. Let's give this some water and then go back through. Let's see if that's enough. All right. Hopefully that hasn't ruined my palate for the Tobermory. All right, back to the Tobermory 10-year-old. Haha. Okay, it's come alive a little bit. So now it really smells like grapefruity heaven. That is really, really grapefruity now, and I love it. This needs to be older. I think 12 helps. I would love to see, I mean, what's the math on this? So Tobermory started to get good around 97, 98. I would love to try, like a 23, 24-year-old version of this in refill cask. I really think that would be spectacular. The profile on this really strikes me as something that could age very, very well, because it's fat, but it's also kind of jagged and weird, and that just strikes me as something that will take, time in a barrel like crazy. All right, but let me give you some more notes. Grapefruity, it's just very weird and beery and sour and grainy, and kind of, the mustard has mostly gone away, but it's still there a little bit. Sort of just mutant malty, and I love it. On the palate, ooh. Oh. So this was dry without water. With water, it becomes really, really seriously dry. Wow. Much more peppery, much more creamy now. Creamy and peppery. More minerally, the sort of rocky thing that was coming out in the IB a little bit, that's happening now. Kind of a cider apple thing, like lavender candy now. But really dry. It feels, all those sort of malty floral candy elements just get swallowed up in this wave of pepper. But it's like creamy pepper. It's like my mouth is being massaged. Oh, that's terrific. So I'll be honest with you, score-wise. I had this, before I added water, I had this maybe 83 plus. When you add water to this, it really brings out, it kind of comes alive a little bit. Okay, hypothesis, maybe Tobermory distillate just swims really well. If you have one around you, just lying around, try it. Like, just play around with your water, see how it reacts. Even if you don't normally, like this likes water a lot. So I'm gonna give this 85 points out of 100. And I know that doesn't mean any much because this doesn't exist anymore. But man, if you see any of these left over sitting on a closeout shelf for 40 bucks or whatever, grab them. Grab them up. They're terrific. Again, assuming you're ready for a profile like this, because this is not the easiest thing in the world. 85 out of 100. And it kind of makes me excited to try a 12-year-old. but also to try, you know, if they got any 23-year-olds out there, send them over. Send them over. I want them. I will review them for you. I will do pay a look. Give me the old Tobermory. Okay. Moving on. Wow. I was not expecting that to kind of get that good. Moving back to the Led-chaig 10-year-old. Now with some water. Not a ton of development. Less development than the Tobermory, actually. It gets a little bit more candied. That kind of lavender candy thing I was getting on the Tobermory sort of coming out a little bit. Otherwise, very similar. And that's not a bad thing because it's had a great nose to begin with. On the palate, again, kind of does the same thing as the Tobermory, just less so. It gets more kind of creamy and peppery with water. Makes this kind of more hedonistic and desserty. But this was already kind of hedonistic and desserty to begin with, so it's not a huge change of direction. Yeah, it's peaty, appley, beery, mustardy pleasure. That's what this is. Score-wise, I would give this an 86 plus out of 100. I'm not going to go too crazy on this. Well, let me try it again. So where is this in the world of sort of entry-level peated malts? I would take this over Bowmore 12. Anytime, no questions asked. I would take this over Laphroaig 10 these days. Yeah, I've never... The cast strength Laphroaig is another thing, but the standard 10, I think this is better. After that, it gets a little fuzzy. Like Kalila 12, I mean, it's much more expensive than this, so this is winning on value, but in terms of actual quality, this is they're probably right, you know, it's probably a photo finish. I think this would probably lose to, you know, Ardbeg 10, Lagavulin 8, Port Charlotte 10. But the fun thing about it, again, is this little Led-chaig is offering an alternative, right? In terms of its character, it's probably most similar to the Port Charlotte, but even the Port Charlotte is not bringing these the level of weirdness that this thing is, if that makes sense. So I know I've said the same thing a couple of times, but may as well say it again. If you're looking for something different, these are really good options. And definitely, you know, good little value for what it is, especially if you see it go on sale. I mean, grab it up. You know, just freshen up your palate a little bit. Give it a break from the Ardbegs and the Laphroaigs and stuff. Right, so I would give it 86 plus out of 100. Good stuff. And now, for its greatest challenge, its greatest foe, an independent bottling, which you. I mean, it's not like you're going to stumble across this particular bottle in your travels very often. Probably not. I think they're probably mostly sold out at this point. But there's going to be tons of independent bottlings of Led-chaig pretty much similar to this. And they are definitely well worth noticing. And that's why I'm reviewing this one, to give you some flavor of what they're like. All right, with water, this Led-chaig 2008 becomes kind of delightfully earthy. There's like a fresh potato thing going on in the nose now, you took a potato that you just dug up, and you covered it with some black pepper. It's less peaty than the official bottling, but more smoky. The sort of coal smoke element is coming out, and there's also some lavender applesauce. I don't know if anyone's ever made such a thing, but This is what it would smell like. All right, on the palate. Oh. Oh, once again, with water, this becomes more creamy and peppery, just like the previous two. And this was already pretty creamy and peppery on the finish. Oh, it's just, this is a wonderful, dry, savory malt. Oh. God, the way this finishes. So you're getting the kind of, a lot of the stuff that the 10 was doing, actually, on the finish. A little bit of the pepper, the beeriness, you know, the peaty, fudgy thing just hangs in there towards the end of the mid palate. And then on the finish, this wave of coal smoke and black pepper just rolls right in and swallows it up. And it's gorgeous. It's like it happens in slow motion. It takes a couple of seconds for it to happen. That is fun. That is priceless. I like this a lot. 89 points out of 100 for this Archives Led-chaig. And this is the problem, right? This is the problem faced by the official bottlers is they're making a great little product here. But it's sitting right down the shelf from people who can do this. So the problem they're faced with is, how do you take this guy, which is nice, which is great, how do you take this up to the level of this? I don't know. I'm just a guy who reviews this stuff on the internet. Anyways, so I guess that's kind of my conclusion. Tobermory Distillery, it's gotten out there. The name is out there, especially the Led-chaig variations. Ralphie is helping with that. But still, in the wide scheme of things, a fun alternative to the Ardbegs, the Lefroys, the Lagavulins, the Port Charlottes. This is one you go to when you're just your palate is a little bit tired of that and you want something new. And that's something that absolutely has a place in today's spirit drinking world. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching. 85 plus for Tobermory 10. May it rest in peace. 85 for Tobermory 10. 86 plus for Led-chaig 10-year-old. And 89 points for the Archives Led-chaig 11-year-old from 2008. That's all I got. Thanks for watching, and cheers.